bring Don Coscarelli and Paul Pepperman back to the stage, please.
Thank you all. Really nice response. See that print? Was that beautiful?
Let me ask before we dive into the film, how is Reggie Bannister doing these days?
He's hanging in there.
Yeah?
Yeah, the rumors of his demise were exaggerated.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. No, he's a tough son of a bitch, so wish him the best.
Again, I know this was the third film you guys made together. We didn't ask this yesterday, but how did you two meet? And then how soon after you met did you decide we should be making movies?
We met at UCLA, our first day of school. We were put together as roommates, and I walked in, met him, and he asked me what I was going to do, and I said, I'm going to be an attorney. I said, what about you? He says, I'm going to be a film director. I said, oh, okay, great. And, we hit it off.
Little did I know.
It all came true, yeah. So we started working together very, very early. I mean, Don didn't want to wait through all of college. He wanted to start creating right away, and so raised the money and started making the first movie right after his freshman year.
How did you become a lawyer? No, you didn't.
No. I ended up working with Don for many years.
I realize you could. It's possible. Anything's possible. Can you, before we dive into the movie, let's talk about the restoration and the Bad Robot involvement. Just sort of walk us through how you came to find out that J.J. Abrams and his people were such fans of the film, and then how did you guys kind of work out how you were going to get this restored?
Yeah, I actually had put this little trailer on my driveway, and I was editing the Bubba Hotep film. And while I was editing it, I got this phone call, and this young guy introduced himself and said, hi, I'm J.J. Abrams, and I make TV shows, and I'm a big Phantasm fan. And I didn't know any of his work. I think he was doing, he had done Felicity and was starting with the Alias show. And so we talked about Phantasm, and he just wanted to ask questions and all of that. And I actually said, hey, why don't you come over to my little trailer and I'll run this new movie for you. Maybe give me some ideas about it. And he came over and watched Bubba Hotep in a rough cut version and had a couple good notes for me. But during this conversation, we got friendly, and from time to time we'd talk, but always I kept going, you like Phantasm so much, why don't you try to work one of the Phantasm actors into one of your shows? You get Angus or Reggie into a show. And he said, well, give me Angus's phone number. And he called him up, and they became fast friends, and JJ put him into the Alias TV series. And he had a nice role, and unlike with Paul and I, he had a nice trailer, which was nice for him, because he'd done a lot of low-budget type stuff. So that's how I met JJ Wade decades ago. And then, fast forward a few years, I made a couple movies, he made a lot of movies, and had very successful, great things. And we called up out of the blue and wanted to screen Phantasm for some of his teammates over at the Bad Robot Company, because a lot of them hadn't seen the film. And at the time, I said, I got this scratchable print, I've got a standard def DVD, what do you want to use? He says, what, there's no high def materials? And I said, no. And we had a distributor that had no interest, and they were about to, their contract was expiring. And so the film was sort of stuck in this standard def limbo, and that's when he offered to figure out a way through Bad Robot to help us do a restoration of the film. And so it was really interesting, because he was doing a Star Trek movie and preparing a Star Wars movie, and had a very big staff over there, and it was just a dream come true for a fraction of what it would have really cost. I think we had to pay something like $15 an hour we could get access and do color correction for the film.
And you were directly involved. You didn't just turn it over. You were.
No, it was like I did a phone call like on a Thursday night. Hey, we have a few hours. You know, we're going to finish up this Star Trek session. Come on over. You know, and work for a few hours. And this took maybe about 4 or 5 months, and we got this really pristine version of the film. And then the best part though is when, as it was just coming to an end, I bumped into him and thanked him, and he said, "Well, what about the audio? What are we going to do about the audio?" Look, I don't want to overstay my welcome here. And he put one of his sound editors, a guy named Robbie Stampler, who was working, I think, on Star Wars at that time, and he did a remix of the and enhanced in stereo. So the music, he was able to make the music really pop. And so I'm very happy with how that turned out.
The two things I remember from the first time I saw this, and I should mention that you and I, there was an event that used to happen in Austin every December called Putnamathon, and it was a 24-hour film festival, but nobody there knew what was going to play. And this played there months before it actually came out and was re-released. And I remember because I was sitting, the seating chart was made by somebody else, but they put me on an aisle, and then right before they started the movie, they put a folding chair next to me. I'm like, what the hell is happening here? And then you came out and introduced the film. We played it, but you came up and sat in that folding chair, and we watched it next to each other. I mean, we knew each other before that, but things I just remember. I remember two things. The sound mix was unlike any time I'd seen it or heard it before. But I remember the scene specifically when Angus picks up the coffin and puts it in the car, does it by himself. And that's the first time I noticed that it was raining in that scene. And I'd never
we had forgotten because you couldn't really see it in any of the
It's
transcripts.
daylight, and the grain would probably get rid of it. So I was like, whoa, that's amazing.
Well, also then we enhanced it with the audio and put a little rain and
Right.
thunder crack, which wasn't in the original version because we couldn't see the rain in that.
Yeah, so I mean, it's remarkable. So just when you were writing this, where did these? I mentioned this yesterday that there's so many just random things that happen in this movie. And they're not really random, but they feel random because they don't feel like anything else that I'd seen before. From some of the designs of the characters to some of the relationships in the film. Where did this start? Where did this idea start? Was there a single image? Was there a? Yeah.
Well, it really came about in my hometown where I grew up, in Long Beach, California. There is this most awesome mausoleum. It's about a 3-story marble mausoleum, and I went there from time to time, and walking around and had that same effect with the echoing marble. And I think that's where I thought, well, why hasn't anybody ever set a movie in a place like this? And we hoped to film in that one, but unfortunately they wouldn't allow. They gave us access to the embalming room and the casket room, and they wouldn't let us film in the mausoleum, which was weird. But no, I had always loved horror and wanted to make a horror film, and I'd seen a few films. I can't remember which ones because they were unmemorable. They were billed as scary horror films, and they were not. And so I thought, well, when I make my horror film, I want to make something that has like a good scare, like every 5 or 10 minutes in the film. And so I came up with the story with the brothers, and there was a little influence came from Ray Bradbury, which is a whole nother story.
Right.
We can talk about when Paul and I went up to Ray Bradbury's office, but Reggie had read the Something Wicked This Way Comes, and it said, you should put this in and put Michael Baldwin in it. And so Paul and I, we went up to Beverly Hills. Okay, there was no phone. We wanted to contact Ray Bradbury.
Yeah, so we found out where his writing office was, this writer's building, and we just went up to the door, and on the door it said something like, whatever you do not knock on this door.
And there was a doormat that said, go away.
So we kind of looked at each other like, it's Ray Bradbury, so we had a nice note, we kind of slipped it under the door, and then we found out he he call you? Or we found out that Michael Douglas had already bought the rights to it, and he wasn't interested in giving it to us.
So I mean, you might see a few influences from that, maybe in the film, and then you know, what was pretty cool though is having made those two earlier films, we really created this little repertory company of actors because Angus Scrimm had been in the first movie, he played this alcoholic, and he was very commanding screen presence. And then Michael Baldwin had been in the film Kenny and Company that we'd done before, and he was just this magnificent young actor. And I, you know, crafted a story around that. Paul had some great ideas.
This was Reggie's third movie with us.
Oh yeah, and Reggie Bannister had been in both of those films. And so, you know, you can tell, I mean, the character of Reggie, you know, it's like, and the character of Mike, they share their real names because they're based a little bit around their character, their real personas.
The other book that comes up every once in a while is Dune, because probably just because there's I think there's a bar called Dune in the film, and then that also that hand where
the Dune's Cantina.
Mike puts his hand in the box. Yeah, that.
I don't understand.
Okay.
The reference. I never knew they were going to make a movie out of that.
So the mausoleum, you built that? That what we see there is
Yeah,
built?
we had a warehouse out in the suburbs of Los Angeles, and it just, we don't work very fast. We're very slow because we're on a low budget and we need to just take as much time to make it look like a quality film. So we couldn't afford to get a real soundstage, so we just rented a warehouse and got some guys to come in there and just construct plywood walls, and everything is wallpaper that looks like marble and little brass things. And so everything, all mausoleum shots are all in the warehouse. And it's really only about like 1.5 aisles, and then we just keep changing things around, so it looks like they're walking through like 5, 6 different aisles of the mausoleum.
One of the things that stood out to me when I first saw this, and it still does, but I remember it jumping out, is the brother relationship is kind of the core thing. And in so many other, not just horror films, but films in general, it's usually like a romance or a parent-child relationship, but brothers was a little more rare. And was it always brothers, or, and the age difference was a certain thing?
That was from the outset. I mean, I never had a brother. You know, the closest brother I ever had was Paul. And so I always aspired to have I wished I had a cool older brother who knew about guns and muscle cars.
And warning shots are bullshit.
You know, someone I could learn about the fairer sex from. But I never had that, so some of that came out in this. But you also, with Phantasm, you have to credit these wonderful actors in the film. And the way that we made Phantasm, and we've also got to credit Michael Baldwin's parents, because for some reason, after we made Kenny and Company, they trusted us. And we would take Michael for like check him out for like 3 or 4 days and bring him over to our house, and he would stay. And you know, he spent a lot of time with Bill Thornbury, he was like the coolest older brother there was. And you know, Michael Baldwin actually learned to drive in the CUDA with Jody, with Bill Thornbury. And so they developed a very tight bond. And so they always called themselves the Brothers Pearson, you know, because the last name they genuinely, and to this day, they still have a very tight bond.
Yeah.
And so it was, that really helped a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I have a younger brother that's about the same age difference, so that's why I think it struck a chord with me, because it was like, wow, I don't think I've ever seen a relationship like this, especially in a horror film. So, so I mentioned before, like, about the sort of randomness, but really,
Let me stop there for a second, because
sure.
there's something there about the movie that we discovered, because, you know, maybe being a little ignorant, we stopped the film about the 1/4 mark and just played a music song for, like, what horror movie does something like that? Well, you know, I loved their song, Bill's writing and Reggie's playing, and so we took that risk, put it in there, And yeah, what that does is it gives the audience a little time to bond with the characters, so that then when things start to go wrong, they really care about the characters. And I'm not sure that consciously I knew that, but it was something that the way the film was made, that we just focused on those relationships.
I often believe that the best way to develop characters is to just show them in downtime, or working, or at their job, but not doing the thing that's forwarding the plot, like something. And yeah, you do, and you definitely, and you had these two musicians in your cast, so why not take advantage of that? No, the role, like, I know the first time I saw this, I didn't understand everything, and
Really?
maybe that, but that's that. I think it sort of pushes you to see it again, because I knew I liked it. I just was like, I'm not quite sure I understood all this. Although I do think it's funny that Mike like gets sucked into that portal, and he's there for like a minute, and he comes back out, he's got it all figured out, and he knows what everything. And I think that's the closest to an exposition dump that you have in this movie. But I'm just wondering, like, did you even understand everything, and did you think that was as important to spell everything out, or would you like to, like, did you want to give your audience a little credit?
No, in retrospect, I'll tell you one thing though. While we were editing for a year long, editing, and we were still shooting, and we still didn't have an ending, and we were trying to figure ways to put it together, we took a lot of risks in editing, where we would cut out exposition to try to keep the story moving. And I think we would always go, oh, we'll just let the audience figure it out. And I like to think that we took the audience's intelligence seriously, that they might be like, jump through some of those leaps in logic. And it turned out that they did, and a lot of people accept the movie without understanding it. And maybe the reason that 4 decades later we're here with all you wonderful people is that a lot of folks have still been trying to piece it all together, and because it's a puzzle in a way.
There has always been, I think you've confirmed it, well, this part you have, that the original work print was closer to 3 hours. And we've seen some of the deleted scenes emerge, we've seen outtakes come out in other films, but is there even a possibility of seeing a much longer version of this?
When you say there's an original 3 hour, it's just us putting all the scenes together.
Right.
I mean, it's not like something that we thought was going to ever be the movie. It's just you put it together and then start cutting, and oh, this scene, yeah, that doesn't really move things along. I mean, so it was never going to be anything out of line with a normal movie length.
But we just had to make, we had to triage things. Like your point about seeing the characters' downtime at work. We had an extended scene over at Reggie's ice cream bar. It was interesting. It was cool.
A lot of fun. Yeah, big ice cream fight.
Did you? When did you decide? Well, okay. Oh no. Okay, we were talking about music before. You told me earlier that you did a music video for Dio, for Last in Line, because it came out, it was something you did after Beastmaster, so I thought maybe Beastmaster was the reason that you got that gig, but it was this film. Tell me about that.
Well, Ronnie James Dio, may he rest in peace. Amazing man and voice. He was a big horror, it was the little death metal-ish world that they came from, and they love their horror icons. They have an icon in the Dio world. They call him Murray, and he's this big dude with a cow head with horns. But in any case, Ronnie was a Phantasm fan, and he had a big budget to make in per capita, I think there was probably more money spent on his video than we spent on Phantasm. But yeah, so he wanted to do something. It was like right out of Spinal Tap. I'm telling you, his wife, wonderful as she had long blonde hair, and she was a British accent. It was like, all kinds of crazy stuff, like right out of there. they gave me two ideas. He was at odds with the record company. He made this song. It's called "The Last in Line," and he tried to tell me about it. And he said, "Man, you know, there's this line, and we're all in the line. But think about it. The implications if you're the last in the line. You know." And I sit there and go, "Yeah." And then the record company exec, who was very talented at his marketing, came in and said, "Yeah, we got this idea. It's going to be teenagers who've gone down to hell." So put it together. So I had to go and put this line thing and go into hell, and the thing is just patently ridiculous. But it was an interesting experience.
I don't want to forget to mention, and it is on sale at the Merck's table, the book Fiction, which is a collection of stories set in the Phantasm world. It's the most recent thing you have put out into the world. Tell me about. Did you have some of these stories like for years and years, or they all new? Or they?
Well, I'm always thinking about the different characters, and just watching the movie here, you're always wondering, like, where's the backstory? Where'd that person come from? You know, and I always have aspired to write some fiction. I had done a little memoir, and it was fun to write. And I thought I'd try to do some fiction, and I thought, well, let's go for the low-hanging fruit. I'll write a few Phantasm stories, because I've got a built-in fan base here, thank you. And so I started writing these stories, and I started off wanted to write an origin story for the Reggie character. And I knew that Reggie Bannister personally had this wonderful music career that was going on, and he got drafted by Uncle Sam and sent to the Vietnam War. And I thought, oh, well, I got to tell that story. But I never asked Reggie about it. I fabricated a story about, you know, a young man in war and his first experience with the supernatural over in the jungles of Vietnam. So that's the first story that starts off. All the stories have interest. One of them tells the entire backstory of the guy who took the ball to the head and died on the floor. Like, how the hell did he come to work for them? What happened when new management came in and started zombies, you know? And so that's one. And then one really fun other one is you were talking about info dumps. We do have an early info dump in the movie with the character of Toby, who is Jody's friend, who comes in and asks him a few questions and disappears, and we never see him again. So I thought, oh, well, what if this Toby saw some of the events of Phantasm from a different perspective? So anyway, I experimented with the Phantasm form. It was a load of fun, and I also realized that I don't think I could ever write a novel because it's too much freaking work. So this is my effort. And if you get a chance to read it, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, and it's spelled, we should say fiction is spelled with a PH at the top, so just so you know. Last thing I want to ask you about is you have somehow avoided ever selling the rights to somebody else for this franchise. You've never turned it over to somebody. I mean, the fifth film, somebody else directed it, you were fully a part of it. But other than that, I mean, you didn't allow it to get rebooted or sequelized without your involvement. Tell me why that was so important to you, because you could.
Well, there was a lot of interest about, 15, 18 years ago, and the problem was that all the Phantasm actors were still alive and viable, and I just, I couldn't walk up to Angus Scrimm and say, oh, we're gonna make a remake, and Nicolas Cage is gonna play it. Although he and Nicolas Cage were actually friends, which is a whole another side story. They made a whole Coppola family. Angus was like dating Nicholas's grandmother. This is true. Anyway, to bring that around, we started up with that Phantasm 5. It just took like 5 years, and so I kept pushing any interest off. Look, would it be cool to have a reboot of Phantasm with some talented young visionary director? Hell yeah, I would like to see it. And maybe if we do a Q&A, if anybody has an idea, who could play the Tall Man? Your friend, Michael Shannon. Would he be a great Tall Man?
Excellent. He's here tonight. No.
Come on down.
Guys, thank you again, so much for coming out for these 2 days and showing us these movies.
No audience questions? Come on, a couple.
I'm gonna get a couple, but it can't be that many because we have another show coming in like 20 minutes. Okay, on the aisle there.
I hate to ask a magician to reveal his secrets, but any stories regarding your practical effects, I would love to hear.
Well, Paul had a lot to do with this. Oh, by the way, you remember in the scene where the tall man's hand is trapped in there and the fingers get chopped off? These are the fingers, right? After the show, if you want to get a photo with the real fingers.
You know, this was made a long time ago, and we also have a low budget, and so we needed to just make sure that we could do everything possible without, obstacles. And so, the ball, the silver sphere, we had someone in the crew who was a junior college pitcher, so he would throw the ball right down the aisle, we would slow motion reverse, and then when it comes around the corner, it was just some fishing line wire connected to it, and I would just throw the ball, and it would just go around the corner and shoot in slow motion. The portal to the other world is all mirrors, no special effects whatsoever, other than just, it's a mirror there, shining, reflecting the white wall. What else? The only thing that was really optical is just the flying ball from the side, where we're going with it, where you can kind of tell the spheres come out. But other than that, it was all really...
And that, by the way, was the only shot in the entire film that was enhanced just a little bit by the bad robots.
I mean, when Jody shoots the silver sphere with the shotgun in the mausoleum, it's just a hanging Christmas ball filled with red tempera paint, just with a firecracker in it.
All right, who has a killer closer question? I see one way back there. Oh, no, you're just leaving. Okay, don't worry. You guys. Okay.
Steve, there's a guy jumping.
He's jumping.
Okay, whoever's jumping, I can't see him.
Yeah.
How did you land on the CUDA?
How did I decide to use a CUDA in the film is the question? Okay, I was in high school, maybe some of you had the same experience. There was this younger kid that had a brand new green CUDA out in the parking lot, and I would walk out, and my good friend Mark Annerl, who actually designed the mausoleum for us, he would go, how does that little shit have such a great car? And we're driving these old beaters, and he would race out of the parking lot, and I thought, God, someday I'm gonna get one of those cars. So while we're figuring out the storyline, I'm thinking, oh, the brothers should drive the car, what should they drive? CUDA. So that's where it came from.
Just so you can own one.
Okay, just a quick reminder, if you want to get anything signed or buy some merch or take pictures, we're set up in the TerraVision video store just south of here, so it's just like a door down. Go out the front door, hang a left. You're probably going to be greeted by a big line for the next movie, so just kind of work with them, but you should be able to get in. And clear path back. Thank you.